Good morning, students. Today we'll be looking into the meaning of total cost, average fixed cost, average variable cost, and average cost. Now, last time in our economics lecture, if you remember, we had studied the meaning of the fixed cost, that is, those costs that does not have any relationship with the production unit is called as fixed cost. For example, the staff salary or the rent of a factory. So it is considered to be an indirect cost. Variable cost are such costs which has a direct relationship with the production units, and therefore it is called as direct or main cost also. For example, the price or the amount spent on buying the raw materials is directly related with the production. So we saw what is meant by fixed cost, we saw what is meant by variable cost. Now let us look into the next thing, that is total cost. Now total cost means the summation of the total fixed cost and the total variable cost. Now if you look over here in the figures, you can see when the number of units is 0, the total fixed cost is 100, the total variable cost is 0, and the total fixed cost, that is the TFC plus the TVC, will give you 100. If you move down to the production units of 20, we can see 100 is the fixed cost as it is always fixed. Variable cost has increased to 150, and so 100 plus 150 will give you 250. Coming down to the number of units when it is 50, then you can see that the TFC and the TVC adds up to 490. So in short, the total cost is always equal to total fixed cost plus the total variable cost. And with the increase in production, although the fixed cost remains fixed, but the variable cost will increase. And you can see the resultant figure, that is the total cost will also increase because of the increase or rise in the variable cost. Now moving on to what is meant by average fixed cost. Now average fixed cost means that cost that we get per unit of output. In short, for producing 1 unit of output, how much fixed cost is there? That is termed as average fixed cost. We can obtain average fixed cost by dividing the total fixed cost by total production unit, that is the TFC divided by the TP. Now initially if you see, when the units is 0, the total fixed cost is 100, but any number divided by 0 doesn't give a resultant outcome, and so you can see the very first column being blank. We move down to the production unit 10, we can see that the total fixed cost is 100, so 100 by 10 we get the answer as 10. Moving down to 20 units of production, so 100 by 20 will give you 5. Then you can see 30, that is 100 by 30 giving 3.3, 100 by 40 is 2.5, and you can see now that after 3.3 the average fixed cost reduces. So you can say that the average fixed cost, as the number of units increases, the average fixed cost also goes in the reverse manner and it decreases because on the number of units the total fixed cost gets divided. So, but the average fixed cost decreases but never becomes 0. So, you have to remember that average fixed cost is the cost of per unit of output which is obtained by dividing the TFC by TP, that is total fixed cost by the total production unit. Now let us look into the next thing, that is the average fixed cost. Now average fixed cost is obtained by dividing the total variable cost by total production. Now total cost, variable cost of a firm when divided by the total units produced, the answer that we will be getting will be the average variable cost, that is the variable cost per unit of output. Now you might think that why it is necessary to find out the average variable cost. It is important to find out because decisions regarding whether the production should be continued, whether there should be an increase in production, or whether the company should close down. So production related matters are further decided on the basis of the average variable cost. And in order to find out the average variable cost, as said earlier, the TVC has to be divided by the TP. Now if you look over here, the very first thing you can see in the production is when the unit is 0, the total variable cost is 0. So the average variable cost is left blank. In the next one we can see 80 by 10, that is the outcome is 8. Then you can see 150 by 20, so the outcome is 7.5. Then you can see 210 by 30, for which the outcome is 7. Now you can see the reduction, that after certain number of units, because of the increase in the variable cost, the average variable cost also goes on increasing. So what we can see over here is that initially the average variable cost decreases, but after a certain number of outputs, the average variable cost starts decreasing. Whereas in the average fixed cost, the number was always being reduced as the average fixed cost was same. So here you can see the next figure is 7.25, and after that we can see 7.8, that is obtained by dividing 390 by 50. So comparing these two figures, you can see that in the average fixed cost, the numbers goes on decreasing. In the average variable cost, initially the average variable cost decreases. After a certain time, it later on goes on increasing. Coming down to the average cost. The average cost is also called as the average total cost, and it shows the cost per unit of production. This can be obtained by dividing the total cost by total production, or you can also say by dividing fixed cost plus the variable cost by the total production. Now if you look over here, when we come down to 10, when the total fixed cost is 100, total variable cost is 80. So 180 divided by 10, we get the average cost as 18. Then in the next we can see the total cost being 250. So 250 by 20 gives us 12.5. You can here see an decreasing trend, 10.33, 9.75, and after that, like the average variable cost, the average cost also goes on increasing. So you can see a similar trend both in the average variable cost and the average cost, that initially the averages goes on a decreasing pattern, and after a certain number of units of production, the average cost and the average variable cost both will have an increasing pattern. So here we have seen all the figures related parameters in which I had explained to you all the different type of costs that are involved for producing any particular commodity. Now below that you can see the marginal cost also, that also we will be covering right now, and later we will be seeing the diagrammatic representation of the total cost, the average fixed cost, the average variable cost, and the average cost also. Now let us look over here what is meant by marginal cost. Now you can see say that marginal cost is that particular cost that gives you an idea about the change in costing while producing one additional unit of commodity, or in other words, marginal cost is a change in total cost when an additional unit of output is produced. Now let us look over here. You can see the output starts from 1 to 7. You can see the total cost figures moving on in an increasing manner, starting from 9 to 16 to 21 till it goes up to 70. Now when you can when I want to check that how much marginal cost is there from when I move from 2 to 3 units of production. So how do I get that? Initially, if you assume that the output is 0, so for producing 1 unit my marginal cost will be 9. Now for producing 2 units, that is from 1 to 2, so you can say 1 additional unit, marginal cost can be obtained by 16 minus 9, that gives you the answer 7. For assuming that the output increases from 5 to 6, if I want to know the marginal cost, then from the total cost 54 minus 40, the additional unit costs 14 rupees. So you can see over here that the formula that we applied in order to find the marginal cost is MCN is equal to TCN minus TCN minus 1. Now what does the TCN stand over here? Supposing if we want to find out for 6 units, then TCN stands 6 minus TCN minus 1, that is 5 units. So 6 minus 5, appropriately we put the values 54 minus 40, that gives the answer 14. Now from the textbook we will be we will be seeing further explanation regarding all those concepts of cost that we have studied.